Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Shepard, and I am the Director of Growth and Strategy at Careers here at Udacity. Welcome to Udacity Festival 2018 and our second career panel of the day, How to Make It as a Solopreneur. This is going to be a fantastic webinar, and it's a session with two of our outstanding advisors here. One is an alum and one is a career advisor who have both made it as a solopreneur and who have some great advice on how you can do the same thing. This Udacity Festival is an opportunity for people throughout the Udacity network around the world to get together. We're lifelong learners, we have grit, we're willing to take chances, and no one knows that better than someone who's willing to strike out on your own, take it all out, and make a solo journey. So this session is for the bravest of the brave. So thanks for joining us today. And before we get started, we are a global community. I'd love to find out where you're joining us from. So if you could get into the chat and type in where you're joining us from, we'd like to welcome you. I'm joining from the Bay Area. I'm originally from Chicago, though. We have Karen and Vera and Gil who are also joining us from the Bay Area. Oh my goodness, I see Austin, I see Minneapolis, Nigeria, Brazil, Canada, the Caribbean, Zambia, Bolivia, Atlanta, Tennessee, Clarksville, Oregon, Hillsboro, Oregon, India, Germany, Pensacola, Florida, Seattle, and hi Mario from Mexico, Kansas City. Christian's joining us from Mars, so that's a pretty long journey for you. South Africa, Singapore, the Czech Republic, Romania. Thank you, everyone. This is awesome. We're really looking forward to this global network and all of us getting together. So now that we're all joined, let's get started on why we're here. So we're all here today to talk about how to make it as a solopreneur, and no one better to do that than our first guest, Gil Akos. Gil is a co-founder and a CEO at Astra. He's also a digital a Udacity alum. So Gil, I'd love you to introduce and tell a little bit about yourself.
Hi there. So as Jane said, first of all, really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I am the co-founder and CEO of Astra. We're building a mobile app that helps you manage your finances through automated savings and bank transfers. My background's actually in architecture and design, but before Udacity, I was mostly a self-taught programmer. And I spent a lot of time working with complex systems and 3D geometry in the kind of design field. My path led to Udacity when I wanted to start Astra. I really thought this thing should exist in the world, and I was passionate about it. I needed it for my own finances. So I had to build it, and the nanodegrees were the way that I could do that. 2 years later, Astra exists. We've launched the app, and we're starting to grow, so it's super exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Gil. Wonderful. I also wanted to do a call out. London and Indonesia are here, and they felt left out. I didn't mean to leave you out. We also are welcoming Rio de Janeiro in the Netherlands, so welcome to all of you as well. Our next guest is Vera Fishman. Vera is a career counselor here at Udacity, a career advisor. She's also a founder and a career coach of her own business, so I'd love for her to talk about her courageous venture. Vera?
Thanks, Jane, and thank you everyone for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So my name is Vera Fishman. I'm a career coach. I have not always been a coach. I have background in marketing analytics. So I spent about 7 years in various marketing analytics roles across different companies, tech companies here in the Silicon Valley. And then in about 2013, I changed directions and I started coaching. And I shifted into coaching in 2013, and I started running my own coaching practice in 2014. And my coaching practice has seen a lot of different iterations. It actually originally wasn't a career coaching practice at all. It was coaching focused on confidence development. Then it shifted into career coaching, which I absolutely love. I have run it full-time. I have run it part-time. I've run it part-time because I was spending time with family. I've run it part-time because I was doing consulting work, mostly in the coaching field as well. So I have a lot of different experience running a coaching practice as what they call lifestyle business, right? So a lifestyle business is a business that's not intended to grow and take over the world. I run a coaching practice as a solopreneur because I love coaching and I want to be coaching. So I've learned a lot throughout this journey and look forward to sharing what I've learned with you today.
And we look forward to learning from you too. Thanks, Vera. So I know today's title is How to Be a Solopreneur, but some of you have already done this. It's always better to do things together. So while we're all here sharing this journey, I invite you to share your LinkedIn profiles here and to connect with each other so you can help each other after this session and stay connected. So please in the chats, continue to share your LinkedIn profiles as we talk together about how to make it as a solopreneur. So the format of today's session will be, we're going to go through 3 main principles that will help you make this courageous journey. And then we'll also ask some questions. We'll take the questions from the chat and try to have a Q&A at the end of this. So let's dive in. So our first principle of how to make it as a solopreneur is you're your own boss, but you're also your own employee. So how do you manage? How do you navigate that, right? How do you think, gosh, I'm the boss. How do I measure how I'm doing so well? I'm the audience. How do you balance the demands of being the only person who is, no one's there telling you what to do, right? You need to figure it out on your own. So how do you hold yourself accountable, but how do you also give yourself the space you need to grow and keep that balance? So why don't we start with you, Gil, and jump in with your suggestions on this?
Sure. So, I mean, I think the key thing there is balance for sure. The kind of best little snippet audio bite that I have heard that I really like is the only great entrepreneurial advice that's generic is that there is no generic entrepreneurial advice. So everyone's situation is different. Everyone's business has different context. Really, I think it's about striking a balance. So that's some degree of structure and some degree of letting that structure be a little bit more fluid. So like in my personal experience, about a year ago, I was doing the full stack and React Nano degrees. And I tried to set myself up with doing certain bursts of learning in the evenings. I also had a 3-month-old son at the time, so the schedule had to kind of line up. Doing bursts of learnings on certain things in the evenings, and then other like more applied learning in the morning when I could kind of fit the time in. So that was a structure that I used, and I tried to like know myself and say, okay, well, I need to absorb in doing the videos in the evenings, because that's what my capabilities for my learning style were at that point, and then switch it over to like writing some code in the mornings. And that's what worked for me. But I'd say that even though I didn't say every night I was going to do it, I try to keep some structure, but know that like in certain times, there's a lot of other things going on. So you have to kind of ride the waves, so to speak, like using a surfing metaphor.
So it sounds like you did a good job of being a good boss and a good employee, because you were pretty self-actualized there, right? To know and what your strengths were when you were at your best. And as a good employee, you listened to that and you scheduled your work around the times when you could be most effective and make the biggest impact. So it sounds like you did a good job of managing both of those.
Yeah, it's finding that balance and being aware, I think, is of what you're capable of when, and really leveraging that as much as you can so that you can get as much done, because there's always a million things to do when you're an entrepreneur.
Wonderful. So how about you, Vera? Are you a better boss or a better employee? And how did you navigate that difference?
Well, I think one of the biggest realizations that I've had over the past few years that I try to share with people is that I was surprised that I started a coaching business because I wanted to coach. And I thought that if I can be the best coach out there, that's what really matters. And what I discovered is actually that's not important at all. There is a lot of great coaches out there. When I'm starting a coaching business, I'm starting a business. I don't need to put a lot of effort into being a great coach because I already am. That's why that's why I'm doing this. But what I need to do is I need to be a great business owner, right? I need to be able to set goals. I need to be able to do operations, accounting, marketing, all of those different elements. And for me, that's something that I share with people now is that, again, if you're starting especially a lifestyle business because you want to do what you love, don't worry about that thing that you love. You're already great at it. You're going to be able to do it. Find certain hours of the day when you're going to do it. With coaching, it's easy, right? I have client meetings, and that's where I wear my coaching hat. The rest of the time, I am not a coach at all, right? The rest of the time, I'm a business owner. And that's something that's been really helpful to me, realizing that.
That's awesome. So that's managing also the CEO role, right? So the different hats of saying not just the boss and the employee with what you're focusing on with your journey, but saying as an overall business. So the other piece of that that's missing is you don't have an HR department. So in between managing all of these roles of like, I own the business and these are the things that get done, how do you prioritize the time to take care of yourself so that you're able to still keep up the energy you need to keep this thing going and keep it on the road? And I know, Vera, you have some specific tips to share for us on this one.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that question, Jane. That's a really important topic. And again, remember, my background in coaching is in confidence, so that's something that I'm really interested in. And taking care of yourself is a huge part of feeling confident. For me, setting realistic goals is one element, because I can never be perfect. Nobody can ever be perfect. I do what I love, and so I want to be perfect at it, but I can't do that. So setting goals that are achievable. And again, looking at it from business perspective, not from my creative coaching perspective, is something that's important. 2 is having support structure, right? Is people who are around me. My family is very supportive. My husband is very supportive. He helps me to feel good about myself when I'm having a bad day. He also helps me to sometimes say, that's okay. You don't need to push harder here. You need a break. Knowing what I love, what brought me to this business, and sometimes remembering to just have fun with it, because a lot of the time it becomes, once what you love becomes irresponsibility, a lot of the times it's not fun anymore. So every once in a while, allowing myself to just do something that's fun for a few hours in the context of the coaching business, right? So I can go ahead and I create a new program, which is my idea of fun, and not worry how. And then finally, every once in a while, just giving myself a break. And I personally like going to the spa.
Good for you. No, self-knowledge. Gil, you talked about trying to do this while you're balancing an infant and all kinds of other things. How did you set those boundaries so you were also taking care of all aspects of your life while you were also trying to nurture this new business starting off?
Well, it's hard because you have to both be laser focused on the things that you're trying to accomplish, but like Vera said, with setting goals, but you have to be able to do that both near term and long term. Because if you don't ever remind yourself about the long-term goals and you're always in the short term, you're going to burn out for sure. Because, I can just spend an extra hour doing this and I can accomplish it. And then if that keeps happening day over day, task over task, it just starts to accumulate. So in the same way that everyone talks about businesses taking on operational debt or technical debt, it's the same thing as an entrepreneur. You're basically setting yourself up for a long-term failure. So the best advice that I've come across that I really subscribe to is that if you're the CEO or you're your own boss as a solo entrepreneur, your number one job is to take care of yourself. And so if you're not doing that, you basically need to either fire yourself as your own boss, or take steps to mitigate the challenges that you've come across. So a couple of key tips that I think are really valuable is looking for outside resources, whether that is support. Interpersonal support is huge. Executive training and coaching is really helpful. Reading books on the topic are really reinvigorating and can help you break out of that short-term focus. Because really, it's all about the long-term goal, right? Achieving your lifestyle business or growing your startup. Those are the long-term goals. And if you don't ever remind yourself of those, you're going to basically be on a path to burn out, which is it's a challenging thing to do. I'm not an expert at it at all, but you definitely have to take care of yourself, number one.
But that's great advice. It's a self-awareness of admitting that it's a more complex thing than just I'm only in this one aspect of the business. You did a great transition to our second principle here, Gil, with the short and long term. So in addition to short and long-term goals, I think one of the things that helps to keep a solopreneur on track, in addition to keeping track of that long-term goal, is to set early and short-term milestones for early success, right? It's easy to get lost in the vision of I'm not there at the end goal. So you need to create some short-term milestones so you get some positive reinforcement and realize and can do some checks am I on track with where I need to be, or where do I need to adjust? And you can do some pivoting and adjusting as you go along. So I'm curious how, Vera, you did this in setting up your business, where you had some short-term milestones that helped you decide, am I on track? Do I need to adjust something? How am I doing, even though I'm not at the end goal yet? And this ties along with some of the questions that we've had from people about like how long it took you to get started in your business.
Mm-hmm. Well, full disclosure, I don't think I did a great job at that in the beginning. And actually that's important to realize is most people, as Gail said, right, there is no one single way to do this. And so most people figure out how to do things along the way. And it means you are making a lot of mistakes in the process. For me, I actually have a whiteboard in my house, similar to what Gail has. And I actually have my goals written out there month by month and then week by week as well, right? So when you were starting from scratch, right, I had to do things such as set up a website, set up a mailing list, set up calendars and things like that. And each one of those elements is to be celebrated when you achieve it, right? Even if the end goal is to make a living as a coach end goal is to make a living as a coach. And so that's pretty much monetary, but disconnecting myself from those numbers and dollar signs and saying, hey, if I finish a website today, that means that I'm on track. If I get 100 people on my mailing list, then I'm on track. If I do an event, even if no clients come out of that event, then I'm on track. And so setting up goals and then celebrating and realizing that if I'm hitting my milestones, even if I'm not where I need to be, it's a success is important.
Awesome. How about you, Gil? How did you use short-term milestones to let you know if you were on track, where you needed to adjust, or if you were falling behind?
So I think that I erased my goals and kind of our target milestones for Astra before the webinar, but I agree, like just the act of writing them down is hugely important. One thing that we do is we send out, between my co-founder and myself, I send out a weekly kind of bullet list of what our kind of metrics were for the last week, what our goals are for the upcoming week, what schedules, like key events that are upcoming. And every Sunday night or first thing Monday morning, I send that out. Right. And so it's like, it becomes habitual. And the kind of tie back to earlier about adding some structure, whether it's on your whiteboard or an email or whatever tools that you're using, that's hugely important. I'd also say that, and I agree with Vera here on celebrating short-term wins. Every little thing, like it could be somewhat arbitrary, like you got 10 more users to visit your website, or the smallest thing can be important because, again, it's a long journey. So you have to be able to kind of like, lay down the foundations to get to the next step. The one thing I would caution against is looking at celebrating vanity metrics. Scott Belsky, I think, has some of the best content on this in his new book. It's really great. Like doing insecurity work, like refreshing your Google Analytics to see how many people came to your website periodically through the day actually adds up. So, and it doesn't help you in the long term. Maybe it helps you feel good about yourself right then and there. So the other like big takeaway I'd add is auditing your calendar and doing that like on a monthly cadence. What did I spend my time on over the last month, and what should I not be spending my time on as much as what else should I be spending my time on? Because so much about it is your limited capacity, whether you have outside funding, your company's growing great, your limiting factor always is time. So there's always an aspect of how can you optimize your time so that you're getting the most done and achieving your goals, regardless of if they're just business goals, getting to certain metrics, or personal goals in terms of what you're trying to get out of your business in terms of fulfillment.
That's awesome. I love that. Using these short-term milestones is also a way to reflect, right? To say because every yes is a no to something else, because time it's so using those to say, am I on the right track? Am I spending my time in the right places? I think is awesome. I noticed when you talked about these short-term metrics, both of you talked in terms of numbers. How do you arrive at these numbers for what these metrics should look like, deciding what does success look like and how am I going to measure that at these intermediate goals? Who wants to jump in? Gil?
I could start. And it's a pretty easy one, and it's comfortable for us for Astra. So our number one top line metric is monthly active users for our app. And that is somewhat of a common kind of engagement objective for mobile apps and web apps and things like that. But it's important that you kind of define for your business case what your key metric is. So for some, it might be top line revenue. For some, it might be new customers. But whatever you decide that top line metric is going to be, which may be supported by others, but whatever that top line metric is going to be over the long term, it's what you're going to optimize for in the business. So you're basically setting up what decisions you'll be making in the future by measuring and trying to increase that one number. So for us, it's a personal finance app. Some people get paid monthly, some people get paid bi-weekly, that's variable. But what we were hoping is that at least one time a month, people would open the app, check their balances, and schedule some transfers, maybe move some things over to savings. That was what our kind of minimum was. So that's what we set. There's some other engagement numbers that come after that, but that's what we decided was going to be ours, so that in the future we'd still have some value offered to the user, so that we're not optimizing for things like daily active users, which is maybe something like a social media app might have. So that was kind of our decision-making process for our kind of business metrics.
That's awesome. So these business metrics are really useful for you in deciding if you're on track, also for keeping you motivated and giving you short-term successes to celebrate. But they're also really important if you're trying to get funding, right? Trying to get other people on board to invest in your business. So we've had quite a few questions specifically for you, Gil, right now on how you got funding, how soon you got it, how long it took you to get the funding, and how you use these metrics to go about doing that.
Sure. Taking a step back to give a little bit of context, we've been on our journey of building Astra for over 2 years now. Officially, the company will be 2 in about a week. But obviously we were working on, and I've written a little bit about this on Medium and such, we were working on it before we actually formed the company. So it's been quite a long journey. In terms of outside funding, we've really only raised one angel round. That's pretty small. And that was really to get us from our last product that we built a year ago to our current product, and get it out there and really put it in people's hands and see what the kind of real life experience of using the app might turn into in terms of feedback. I think that offline, I'd be happy to answer more questions about just the general process of fundraising and what I've come to learn. Although again, I'm no expert on it. But I would say that just in context, we've been working and building on Astra and building products for like 2 years just to get to this point.
That's awesome. Thank you. And congratulations on your upcoming anniversary. So Vera, we talked about funding from outside sources. What about self-funding? How do you use these milestones to decide for yourself whether you're on track with what you're trying to make, whether you can live on what you're trying to do, and what your next goals will be for creating a successful business and defining that in terms of your own personal financial success as well?
Yeah, great question. And it's easier in some ways and it's more difficult in other ways. So jumping and starting a lifestyle business means that I'm not going to be making all of the money that I would have been making if I were working for someone else right this moment. And so that's that big picture long-term goal for me. That's what it always has been, is where do I need to be financially? What is the revenue I need to be making eventually in order for this to work for me? And that's going to be different for everyone, right? For me, a huge part of this is what my family, me and my family can afford to do. And essentially how much can we invest, how much time and opportunity we can invest into this. And so I was always thinking of it in terms of more of 1 year goal, is where do I need to be financially? What's the revenue I need to be bringing in financially 1 year from now? And then from there, back up and figure out what are the milestones, right? For me as a coach, it kind of breaks out into one-on-one coaching, group work, Also some products that I also create as a part of my coaching business. And so at every given point of time, I have milestones as to, all right, am I on track in terms of one-on-one growing my one-on-one coaching practice? Am I on track in terms of growing my groups, etc.? But again, focusing on that end goal, where do I need to be a year from now in terms of the revenue I'm bringing in, is that where it all starts.
That's awesome. So it's inspiring to talk about like making yourself track your success, and both of you obviously have done very well at this. I'd like to migrate to our third principle here, which is what you do on that dark night of the soul when things maybe aren't going as well as they can, and how do you leverage that belief in yourself, belief in your mission, and belief in what you're going to do so that you power through those moments when things maybe aren't going so well, or when you hit a metric where you're falling behind. What are the strategies that you've used that have been most successful? And Gil, why don't we start with you on this one?
Sure. So I guess for starters, and I would love to hear Vera's opinion on this too, but so I'm a two-time founder of a company. This is my second time at the rodeo. My experience is that it is, no matter how smart you are, how skilled you are, how much funding you have, or what your goals are, it's going to be a roller coaster. There are those dark moments where you're like, oh my gosh, nothing's working. I can't make any progress. It may just feel that way, or that might actually be the case. So the best kind of analogy, again, looking out to great resources that are out there. I think whenever I'm in a dark moment, I like to engage my support network. My wife is really great at that. Just like Vera's partner. But, I also take a minute, okay, well, take a step back. I like to read a little bit. And again, the best example, I'll refer back to Scott Belsky. If you're on a roller coaster, there are dips and peaks and troughs. In the troughs, you have to figure out ways to endure. And the peaks, you have to find out ways to optimize that success. So yeah, that may be seem like super simple, like, oh yeah, just do that. But I don't think it's just that easy. So I think that the kind of best example that, or the best kind of tactic that I've come across is when things are going wrong, try and see what the other question that you haven't asked, what that is, and prompt yourself with it. See if you can answer it, right? Just change the question that you're asking yourself. Not like, why aren't my user numbers growing? Just reformat it into a different question. Like, if I engage this, well, like what channel should I engage to get to my target user? Just to kind of break yourself out of the trough in terms of how you're feeling. And then when things are going good, remember that there's like, savor it for a moment, because there's going to be another trough upcoming. So buckle your seatbelt and try and figure out how to deal with those peaks and troughs.
Sounds like a good navigation strategy. I like that. Vera, I'd love to hear, I share Gil's anticipation there. What's your strategy?
It depends on what's not working. Sometimes it's just feeling like a failure. Sometimes that there's really numbers that are not working out and goals that are not hit. One of the things that works for me is actually taking off, again, as I said earlier, my coaching hat and just doing the work, right? Remembering that it's not always supposed to be fun. It's not always, I'm not running my business so that I always feel good about myself, and focusing on, okay, this is what I need to deliver. And even if I don't feel like doing it, that's still what I'm going to do. That's one strategy that I use. Another strategy is something we also kind of touched upon, is just giving myself a break, right? Because there is going to be a lot of times where it doesn't feel good for whatever reason. Sometimes that there is an unhappy client, sometimes that just having a bad day, and giving myself a break. And when that happens, recognizing that, I can do something nice to myself. As I said, maybe I can take the morning off and spend it with my children. Maybe, again, I can do something fun, business related, but being kind to myself is something that helps me get through those moments.
That's wonderful. So both of you talked about this support network and leaning in on other people, right? Even though you're a solopreneur, you're not alone in the world. So leaning in on other people. So I have a dual-ended question for you now, based on the questions that are coming in on the Slack. And the first of that is, where do you find these mentors and these people that you can turn to who have more knowledge than you? I know, Gil, you talked about books, and we've had several people looking for your book list. So we'll try to share a book list. Maybe we can collect one and share it in the thank you response that we give with this team. And I would encourage anyone who has read a good book to start putting them in the chat as well, so we can all learn from each other and amass a great resource of book resources. But aside from the solo learning of books, how did you find people who could help you and give you the advice you need? I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, right? How do you find the people and the resources that you can turn to?
I have advice on what not to do as a, as a lifestyle business owner. So I spent the first couple of years hanging out with a lot of people who were in my situation. There's a lot of meetups for solopreneurs, etc. And what I realized a couple of years into that, there are wonderful people into that, but those people, a lot of those people are wannabes. And you want to be surrounded by people who actually made it, who are very serious, who are not going to give up, who've already made it. And so for me, something that was an important transition is that when I stopped hanging out with people who consider themselves to be solopreneurs, and I started spending time with people who are either potential clients or who are people who are, in my perception, way further ahead than I am. And for me, I'm a career coach. I'm a huge part of LinkedIn. Finding those people literally on LinkedIn and saying, this person is amazing, I should talk to this person, is a huge part of it.
Awesome. Gil, do you want to jump in with how you found the power mentors who could help you get to that next quantum leap?
Sure. So I think that it's kind of like a series of concentric rings, right? So your probably most reliable support network is going to be those that are closest to you, so family and friends. So that's important, but that's not always the case for everyone. Some people may have thought I was crazy doing what I was doing at my last company or this company. Like, dude, you went to school for architecture. Why are you starting a financial technology company? Like, it doesn't make sense. But that aside, it's a concentric ring. So there's your kind of close personal network. Then I'd say it's finding communities or engaging communities that are topic related. So kind of like Vera was saying, but I also don't recommend meetups. The more narrow the topic, whether it's an event or an online community, the better. So like Udacity as a community is a great one, I think, to start with, and everyone here is already a part of that community. So finding other connections that way is great, whether it's on LinkedIn or the alumni chat or whatever. And then from there, the next layer is the people that you don't already know or have some really strong connection with. And I also agree with Vera there on, if there are people that you look up to, try and go to those events if they're speaking. If you find their like contact information online, you're trying to do a cold email, make it short, sweet, but make it relevant to them. Like, it should be customized. Like, I really appreciate what you did on X, and I'm working on something similar. I just want to tell you that I really, I like following what you're doing. It's really amazing. Even that part can start, and you can develop some really great relationships that way. So some of the kind of other, not just people that have already been successful, but also people on the same boat as me, like other founders I've met just by cold emailing, like, hey, you're doing a really cool mobile app in crypto. Have you thought about this? Or, I really liked how you did this one thing. Engaging them either by way of like, that kind of direct communication, or again, communities that you find that are topic related. I forgot another one is Product Hunt. I think that's been really great for us. There are a lot of specific communities within their kind of maker space and things like that. So I think it's just like finding that thing that is kind of sticky between you and that other person, learning about them, and then trying to make a connection to see what might become of it in terms of a relationship. You can't go into it assuming that someone that's like super successful is going to be your mentor. But, cast a wide net, try and make a lot of connections, because the other people in your same situation, the people that have gone through it before, they understand most what you're doing right now and what you're having to deal with.
That's awesome. And in fact, very, very closely aligned with what we're doing here today, right? People who had the courage to come together and say, we're like-minded, we've come together. So both of you mentioned reaching out to people that were maybe doing things you admired and people that you knew were targeted toward really authentically achieving the things you wanted to achieve. You may or may not have a close relationship with those people. And Vera, I'm going to start with you because you were a confidence coach here, but how do you have the confidence to do that, right? To say to someone who you might not have in your personal inner circle right now, but you know that this person will be a good person to have on your personal board, someone who could really help you achieve your goals long term. How do you reach out to that person in a meaningful way so that they hear you through the noise of all of the other people trying to get their attention and really zero in to help you?
Two things on that. One is recognize that they might not respond, and that's okay. So give yourself a break. Don't expect that everybody is going to respond. And two, in terms of connecting with people that you don't know, is what I always do myself, and I always recommend people, is be real. Don't reach out to people who you think you should be reaching out to. Don't ever try to do that. That's not ever going to work. Find the people when you look at that person and you say, oh my God, I would do anything to talk to this person. This would be so fascinating. And then reach out to that person, tap into what it is. So for example, for me personally, I might be reaching out to somebody who is working in the space of having women get back into the workforce after taking a break, right? And there are a few companies that do that. And I did that a couple of months ago. I was really interested in researching the topic, and I went into LinkedIn and I found those people who work at those companies. And then I looked at their profile and I looked and saw which ones resonate with me, right? I didn't just reach out to somebody who works there because that's something that's that I should be doing. I found people who shared. I always look at their interest sections, right? I look at their volunteering activities. Who are the people who genuinely seem like people I would like to chat with them? And then everything, I've done that many times. I've learned to tap into that and send a message that's truly aligned with that, so that I'm very authentic and saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you, and I think this might be fun for both of us.
Great advice. Authenticity is always, I think people can smell when you don't really mean what you're saying, or if you're trying to use them, right? If it's a one-sided relationship. So I think coming in to make a real human connection is really an important part of that. Gil, do you have any tips to add to that on how you made the connections that most helped you?
Yeah, certainly. I think one of the big things, at least in the tech world and here in the Bay Area, that you can do is build something. It could be simple, right? Like I appreciate cryptocurrencies. I'm not, directly into them, but just as an example, because I used it before, if that's what your interest is and you maybe want to get the attention of someone at Coinbase, build a little app, right? Udacity gives you the skills to do a lot of this. Build a little app and share it publicly and say, hey, check out this thing I did. That's already a great start. You've displayed your interest by way of what you've done, not just that you've said, hey, I really appreciate you, which I still think works, but it's just another path that I think can be even more effective. Similarly, if X or Y company has any kind of public GitHub repository, you can contribute to it, right? Say, oh, I found this bug, or submit a PR because you think that there's another way that things could be structured that might be beneficial to them. Now you've given your time towards a cause, and that can really go a long way. Not in terms of just making a connection, but even in terms of potential employment. I know that happens frequently, especially here in the startup scene.
That's awesome. Authenticity and generosity, I think, are the foundations for a lot of really good human connections. I'd like to pivot a little bit here and explore the other end of those connections now. We talked about how you find these mentors and these people who can help you bring up. How do you find your customers? Like, you're just starting out. How do you find the people that you're actually going to sell to?
Every possible way that you can. This is one of the things that you have to do if you're a consumer technology company, is try a ton of different channels. send direct emails. Anyone that signs up for your email list or signs up in your app, emailing them one-on-one, somewhat of a customized email message goes a long way. So you basically just have to keep trying different channels. It's one of those things that does not scale, that you have to do. But it's really a trial and error thing. But again, a similar approach, I think, is still valid to what we're talking about in terms of making connections. Where do people that would find this app useful hang out, right? Is it in a Slack community? Is it on Reddit? Are they reading, Forbes magazine? So, whatever that answer is, then you have to start spending your time doing activities that will contribute to whichever one of those channels are. Either like if I'm trying to get an article in Forbes, which I have not successfully done yet, but just an example, who's an editor at Forbes? Can I share any tips with them? Can I connect with them on Twitter? All those different things that you have to start doing to try and make those connections that then get you into the community, which one of those concentric rings, so that you can then say like, hey, I built this thing, check it out. I'd love to hear your thoughts and how we can improve it.
I just want to call out to everyone who's listening here that this is one of the reasons you're successful, Gil, because what I just heard you say there is, I'd like to get an article on Forbes, but I haven't done that yet. So it's not that you haven't done it, you haven't done it yet because you're convinced that you will. So that's awesome. That's the kind of attitude that I think has made you successful. Vera, do you have any insights on how you get your customers and spread your business and grow your business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's aligned with what Gil was saying. It's the first customers are not coming from huge campaigns, right? At some point of time, going to grow your business where you're going to have a large mailing list. You're going to have this really big channel brand recognition. You're going to post ads and thousands of people are going to come your way, depending on your business, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, whatever. But in the beginning, every sale counts. And so don't undervalue the individuals who are engaging with you. Every person counts. So for me, first time I ran a group, I had somebody in my group who was, I had somebody from my Toastmasters group who participated in it. I had a parent from my son's daycare, another parent from my son's daycare in it. I had somebody who was a member of the same Solopreneurship meetup in there. And so all of those people came together and it was fabulous. There were more people than I knew, but they literally came from everywhere I talked to people. And that's another thing, you need to be talking about it. If you are not talking to somebody, there's somebody that you know who does not know what you're doing, you're failing.
That's awesome. We have 2 minutes left. So I would like to ask each one of you for your best 30-second tip on what someone who's going to start a business can do to be successful based on what you've already learned. Gil, you're on.
I think the best tip I have is that the toughest thing to do is knowing what your unknowns are. And the number one thing you should try and address is figuring out how to turn those into known unknowns. If they're known unknowns, then you can either learn your way through it or kind of experiment your way through to a solution. But those unknown unknowns are the ones that can really get you.
That's awesome. Get out of the dark and the power of knowledge. And Vera, what's your 30-second tip?
When you're first starting out, listen to people who say you can't do it. There are going to be, it's important, we all want to listen to people who are supporting us, and that's wonderful. But statistically speaking, you're not going to make it. Now, listen to people who say you're not going to make it and argue them and prove them wrong. But listen to their advice, because everything that they're saying, chances are you are going to have to deal with. It might seem like it's not about you because you're great at marketing, or you're not going to need 3 years to build out your mailing list because you have a lot of friends, but chances are it's still going to apply to you. So listen to people who say that you can't make it and prove them wrong.
Awesome advice. We are out of time. I wish we had longer, but you both have been amazing, amazing guests here. Such valuable insights into how to start a business from people who've done it successfully. Thank you both, Vera and Gil, for the wonderful advice you've given everyone here. I would like to say we will follow up. So Gil and Vera, if you can both, we'll get together with you after this and get a list of the books and the tools and the resources that you most recommend to people. And we'll be happy to provide that after the session in the thank yous that we follow up on for attending these sessions. But I thank everyone. We do have another session starting in 15 minutes. Our next session will be on the School of Business and what Udacity is doing, industry trends there, and trends in digital marketing. So for those of you who are looking to start a business, I encourage you to come in, find out how to make your splash and some good digital marketing tips and how to get yourself promoted and get going. Thanks again, Vera and Gil, and know that you can also turn to the Udacity website. We have free careers courses, training for anyone who's interested, and we'll see you all again in 15 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good luck.